Here's another method for cutting and sewing half square triangles. Instead of adding 7/8 to the finished side, which is a little messy at times, we add an inch to the finished side. Adding this inch is simple, but in exchange for this easier math problem, I have to do a little bit of extra cutting later on. Let me show you how this works. First, you need to determine the finished size by measuring one of the shorter sides of your triangle. So here's my triangle, and this is one of the shorter sides. Measure that. I see that is 2 inches. Next, I need to add 1 inch to the finished side. So in this case, I started with 2 inches, I add an inch, and I end up with 3 inches. That's the size of the square that you need to cut. Since I'll be sewing a yellow triangle to a printed triangle, I like to cut both of these at the same time. There's a lot of fabric here to manage. It'll be easier to deal with a smaller piece. So let me just get rid of some of this. I know that I'm going to need to cut a 3-inch square. So if I cut out a piece about 4 inches, that should be more than enough. So here's my selvage, and I can put both of those pieces together like this, so I know everything's kind of lined up, and line it up on a line here, and I'm ready to cut out. Let's see, I'll put this above the selvage, and I'll give myself a little on that side. So let me cut. I'll cut across here, and now I've gotten rid of that extra fabric, and I have 2 smaller pieces that'll be easier to deal with. I've taken my 2 scraps of fabric, and I've lined up the straight edge that I just cut on these lines on my mat. Now I'm ready to cut a 3-inch square. Have my 3-inch square. Since I put this on the diagonal line, it's very easy to come over here and see where that diagonal line goes. It's not necessary, but it helps me line up this corner and that corner. I cut. And now I have 2 sets of half square triangles. I take those over to the sewing machine. I sew a 1/4 inch seam, and then I take that to the ironing board and press. Now I'm ready to trim this with my rotary cutter. You'll notice on the completed square, the diagonal needs to meet in this corner here and this corner down here. On this larger square made with the inch rule, I have a little extra room, not much, but a little extra room to maneuver in. So my finished size is going to be 2 inches. My finished size of my square is going to be 2 inches plus 1/2 of an inch is 2.5 inches. And the 2.5 inch mark is right here. Now I could move this all the way down and over to the 2.5 inch mark and cut off this extra, but I like to cut extra off all the way around just to make sure that everything's nice and straight. The other thing is this diagonal line. The diagonal line on the fabric square needs to match up with this diagonal line on my ruler. If it doesn't, then you're going to have problems when you try to sew it together. I've got that diagonal line matched up. I've got a little extra all the way around here. So I'm confident to make my first cut. Flip it around. So my nice straight edge is down in the corner here. I like to kind of line it up with these lines on my mat. They help sometimes. And now I'm going to measure that 2.5 inches with my ruler. So here's 1, 2.5, and coming down 1, 2.5, and I've got this line all the way around. And I also need to line up those 2 diagonals, and I see that one diagonal is a little off, so let me maneuver that. Yeah, I'm ready to cut. And there you have a 2.5-inch square made from 2 half-square triangles. You can find more information about cutting and sewing half-square triangles at learnhowtoquilt.com under Beginner Basics, Cutting and Sewing.